Every year, millions of Christians unknowingly expose themselves to spiritual deception through music that appears to be harmless artistic expression, but actually serves as a gateway to occult influences and anti-Christian messaging. What makes this deception so dangerous is that these musical influences don't announce themselves as attacks on biblical Christianity. Instead, they disguise spiritual warfare as entertainment and blasphemy as intellectual sophistication. The Bible warns us in 2 Corinthians 11:14, and no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. And nowhere is this masquerade more evident than in how the music industry packages spiritual darkness as artistic enlightenment. Today, we're going to expose 5 musical practices and artists that have systematically normalized occult influences and anti-Christian messaging while maintaining mainstream acceptance. We'll examine how theatrical shock evolved into authentic occult practice, how intellectual sophistication became a weapon against biblical truth, and how the music industry learned to profit from spiritual rebellion. From the pioneer who made death entertaining to the scholar who weaponized theology against Christianity, each example reveals how Satan uses music to wage war against biblical faith. And make sure you stay until the end, because the last artist represents perhaps the most dangerous spiritual deception of all. Before we begin, are you subscribed to this channel? Many people watch our videos but forget to subscribe, missing powerful biblical truths that can protect their spiritual lives. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and comment the country you're watching from so we can see how God is warning believers worldwide. Like this video and share it with other Christians who need to understand how music can be weaponized against their faith. Now let's begin with the artist who pioneered the transformation of death into entertainment. Alice Cooper emerged in the early 1970s as the pioneer of what would become known as shock rock, fundamentally changing how death and macabre imagery could be packaged as mainstream entertainment. Born Vincent Damon Fournier, Cooper created a theatrical persona that systematically introduced guillotines, fake blood, and death simulations into rock concerts, making what was once considered taboo suddenly acceptable to millions of young people. At first glance, many dismissed it as harmless theatrical performance, similar to a horror movie on stage. But here's the red flag that reveals the spiritual danger. Cooper's performances weren't just depicting death, they were celebrating it, glorifying it, and making audiences cheer for darkness. The Bible warns us in Proverbs 8:36, "But whoever fails to find me harms themselves. All who hate me love death." Cooper's shows taught an entire generation that death could be entertainment, preparing the ground for something far more sinister. What makes Cooper's influence particularly dangerous is how he transformed the image of rebellion itself, presenting darkness as the ultimate form of artistic expression and personal freedom. During his Love It to Death tour, Cooper would perform elaborate death scenes night after night, complete with a functioning guillotine that would simulate his beheading while crowds screamed in ecstasy. This wasn't just music anymore, it was a ritual celebration of everything God opposes. Jesus Christ came to give us life, declaring in John 10:10, "I have come that they might have life and have it abundantly." Yet Cooper's entire artistic identity was built on the opposite message, that death, darkness, and rebellion against divine authority were not only acceptable, but worth celebrating. But this fascination with death as entertainment was just the beginning of something much more concerning. What's even more disturbing is how Cooper's theatrical blasphemy opened the door for genuine spiritual manipulation in the music industry. His performances regularly included mock religious ceremonies, desecration of Christian symbols, and deliberate inversion of biblical imagery, all disguised as artistic expression. Cooper would often incorporate crosses, religious artifacts, and biblical references into his death scenarios, creating a direct association between Christianity and macabre entertainment. This wasn't accidental. It was a calculated assault on biblical Christianity, designed to make sacred things seem ordinary and death seem sacred. The Apostle Paul warned about this exact spiritual deception in 2 Timothy 3:13. But evil people and impostors will go from bad to worse, deceiving and being deceived. Cooper's influence proved that when you package spiritual darkness as mainstream entertainment, even sincere Christians can be drawn into celebrating what God abhors. Alice Cooper's legacy reveals how what appears to be harmless theatrical entertainment can actually be a gateway to accepting increasingly dark spiritual influences in music. His pioneering work in shock rock didn't just change music, it changed how an entire generation viewed death, rebellion, and spiritual authority. By making death entertaining and rebellion profitable, Cooper opened a door that could never be fully closed. The Bible warns in Galatians 6:7, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." While Cooper may have presented his work as mere entertainment, the spiritual seeds he planted grew into a harvest of artists who would take his blueprint to far more dangerous extremes. But if you think Alice Cooper's theatrical darkness was concerning, wait until you discover how one Danish artist turned horror rock into something that resembled genuine occult practice. King Diamond, the Danish heavy metal vocalist born Kim Bendix Petersen, elevated horror rock to an entirely different level by incorporating genuine occult storytelling and elaborate theatrical presentations that went far beyond Alice Cooper's shock value. Starting in the 1980s with his band Merciful Fate and later as a solo artist, King Diamond created concept albums that told detailed stories about witchcraft, demonic possession, and supernatural evil, presented with operatic vocal arrangements and elaborate stage productions. At first glance, his work appeared to be sophisticated horror entertainment, similar to reading a Stephen King novel or watching a horror film. But here's the dangerous reality. King Diamond wasn't just telling fictional horror stories. He was promoting actual occult practices and presenting them as legitimate spiritual paths. The Bible warns us in Deuteronomy 18:10-12, "Let no one be found among you who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft, or casts spells. Anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord." King Diamond's music systematically normalized and romanticized these very practices that God explicitly condemns. What makes King Diamond's influence particularly insidious is his sophisticated approach to presenting occult doctrine through narrative storytelling that captivates listeners intellectually while poisoning them spiritually. His album, Abigail, tells the story of a pregnant woman possessed by the spirit of a stillborn child, complete with detailed descriptions of seances, spirit communication, and supernatural revenge. His Them album chronicles a family's descent into madness through occult practices, while The Eye explores themes of reincarnation and spiritual manipulation. These aren't random horror themes. They're systematic presentations of occult beliefs disguised as entertainment. King Diamond's operatic vocal style and complex musical arrangements gave these dark spiritual concepts an air of artistic legitimacy and intellectual sophistication. Jesus warned in Matthew 24:24 that false prophets will appear and perform great signs and miracles to deceive, if possible, even the elect. King Diamond's elaborate presentations serve exactly this purpose, using artistic excellence to make spiritual deception more palatable and convincing. But what's even more concerning is how King Diamond openly incorporates real occult symbols, practices, and beliefs into his performances, creating what essentially amounts to occult education disguised as metal concerts. His stage shows feature authentic ritual elements including inverted crosses, pentacles, altar setups, and ceremonial invocations that mirror actual witchcraft practices. King Diamond himself has publicly acknowledged his interest in LaVeyan Satanism and occult philosophy, making his concerts not just entertainment but genuine occult gatherings. His use of alleged real human bones as stage props and his elaborate ritual-like performances create an atmosphere where the line between entertainment and actual occult practice becomes dangerously blurred. The Apostle Paul warns in 1 Corinthians 10:20-21, "No, but the sacrifices of pagans are offered to demons, not to God, and I do not want you to be participants with demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons too." King Diamond's performances create exactly this kind of spiritual participation, drawing audiences into occult atmospheres while they believe they're simply enjoying sophisticated music. King Diamond's legacy demonstrates how occult teachings can be packaged as high art and intellectual entertainment, making dangerous spiritual practices seem sophisticated and academically interesting rather than spiritually destructive. His influence on metal music was profound, showing countless other artists how to incorporate genuine occult elements into their work while maintaining mainstream appeal. By presenting witchcraft, spirit communication, and demonic themes as complex narratives worthy of serious artistic consideration, King Diamond helped normalize occult practices for an entire generation of metal fans. The Bible warns in 2 Corinthians 11:14 that Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light, and King Diamond's sophisticated artistic approach perfectly demonstrates this principle, making spiritual darkness appear enlightened and cultured. His work proves that sometimes the most dangerous spiritual influences are those that come disguised as intellectual and artistic sophistication. But if you found King Diamond's sophisticated occultism concerning, the next artist we'll examine took a much more direct and aggressive approach to attacking biblical Christianity. Mayhem, the Norwegian black metal band formed in 1984, represents perhaps the most direct and violent assault on biblical Christianity ever launched through music, moving far beyond theatrical performance into what can only be described as genuine spiritual warfare. The band's De Mysteris Dom Satanas era in the early 1990s coincided with a wave of church burnings across Norway, with band members and associates directly involved in destroying over 50 Christian churches, including the historic 12th century Fantoft Stave Church. At first glance, some might dismiss this as extreme rebellious behavior from misguided youth, but the reality is far more sinister. This was a coordinated campaign to literally destroy Christian heritage and replace it with pre-Christian paganism and Satanism. The band's ideology wasn't just anti-religious, it was specifically anti-Christ, with members openly declaring war on Christianity as a foreign religion that had corrupted their ancestral Norse beliefs. Jesus himself warned in John 15:18, "If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first." And Mayhem's violent opposition to Christianity demonstrates exactly the kind of spiritual hatred Christ predicted his followers would face. What makes Mayhem's spiritual rebellion particularly dangerous is how they combined genuine occult practices with real-world violence, creating a blueprint for using music as a weapon against biblical Christianity. The band's vocalist, Dead, Per Yngve Olin, engaged in self-harm rituals before performances, buried his clothes to achieve a corpse-like smell, and eventually committed suicide in 1991, with bandmate Euronymous photographing the corpse for potential album cover use. Their performances weren't concerts. They were ritualistic celebrations of death, self-destruction, and hatred toward God. The band regularly used pig heads, sheep's blood, and other ritualistic elements during shows, creating an atmosphere of genuine occult practice rather than mere shock value. Scripture warns us in John 10:10 that the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy, and Mayhem's entire artistic philosophy embodied this destructive spiritual force. Their influence proved that when music becomes a vehicle for genuine hatred toward God, it can inspire real-world violence and spiritual destruction. But what's even more disturbing is how Mayhem's anti-Christian violence was presented as cultural preservation and intellectual rebellion, making their spiritual warfare appear justified and even noble to their followers. The Norwegian black metal scene, led by figures associated with Mayhem, framed their church burnings and anti-Christian activities as a fight against foreign religious oppression and a return to authentic Norse spirituality. This narrative made their violent opposition to Christianity seem like patriotic resistance rather than spiritual rebellion against God. Euronymous, the band's guitarist and ideological leader, actively promoted Satanism and anti-Christian violence through his record shop Helvet, Hell, which became a meeting place for planning church arsons and spreading anti-Christian propaganda. The Apostle Paul warned about this exact deception in 2 Corinthians 11:13-14. For such people are false apostles, deceitful workers, masquerading as apostles of Christ. And no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. Mayhem's movement successfully disguised spiritual warfare against Christianity as cultural and intellectual enlightenment. Mayhem's legacy reveals how music can become a direct vehicle for spiritual warfare, inspiring real-world violence against biblical Christianity and creating movements that actively seek to destroy Christian faith and practice. Their influence extended far beyond music, inspiring similar anti-Christian violence across Europe and establishing black metal as a genuine anti-Christian movement rather than mere entertainment. The band proved that when artists openly declare war on God and his people, their music becomes more than art. It becomes a recruiting tool for spiritual rebellion and actual violence against Christians. The Bible warns in 1 Peter 5:8 that your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. And Mayhem's violent anti-Christianity demonstrates exactly how Satan uses music to recruit agents for his war against God's people. Their story shows that some music isn't just spiritually dangerous, it's a direct declaration of war against biblical Christianity itself. But if you think Mayhem's violent opposition to Christianity was shocking, wait until you see how one American artist took anti-Christian messaging mainstream and made it profitable for an entire generation. Marilyn Manson, born Brian Hugh Warner, achieved what previous shock rock artists could only dream of, bringing explicitly anti-Christian messaging into mainstream American culture during the 1990s, reaching millions of teenagers through MTV, major record labels, and sold-out arena tours. Unlike the underground Norwegian black metal scene, Manson packaged his rebellion against biblical Christianity as accessible entertainment for suburban youth, creating the perfect storm of spiritual deception wrapped in commercial success. His Antichrist Superstar album and tour literally proclaimed him as the enemy of Christ, complete with elaborate stage productions featuring mock crucifixions, Bible desecrations, and systematic attacks on Christian symbols and beliefs. At first glance, many parents and church leaders dismissed him as another rebellious rock star seeking attention. But here's the terrifying reality. Manson was systematically teaching an entire generation of American youth that Christianity was their enemy and that embracing antichrist imagery was the path to personal freedom. The Bible warns in 1 John 2:18, "Dear children, this is the last hour. And as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, even now many Antichrists have come." And Manson literally branded himself with this prophetic warning, making the spiritual battle explicit and public. What makes Manson's influence particularly devastating is how he weaponized teenage rebellion and cultural alienation to spread anti-Christian doctrine through sophisticated marketing and psychological manipulation. His carefully crafted image combined Gothic aesthetics, gender-bending presentation, and intellectual pretensions to make hatred of Christianity seem sophisticated, artistic, and personally empowering to confused adolescents. Manson didn't just attack Christianity, he presented himself as the alternative savior, promising liberation from what he portrayed as oppressive Christian morality. His concerts became massive rallies where thousands of young people would chant anti-Christian slogans, tear up Bibles, and participate in mock religious ceremonies designed to invert biblical truth. Jesus warned in Matthew 18:6, "If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea." Manson's entire career was built on causing young believers to stumble, targeting Christian teenagers specifically with messages designed to destroy their faith and turn them against their families' beliefs. But what's even more concerning is how Manson's mainstream success proved to the entertainment industry that attacking biblical Christianity could be incredibly profitable, creating a template that countless artists would follow and amplify. His albums sold millions of copies, his tours filled stadiums, and his anti-Christian message received constant media coverage, proving that spiritual rebellion could be packaged as entertainment and sold to the masses. Major corporations, television networks, and media outlets all profited from promoting Manson's explicitly anti-Christian agenda, showing how the love of money could motivate entire industries to participate in spiritual warfare against biblical truth. The controversy itself became a marketing tool, with each Christian protest and parental concern generating more publicity and sales for his anti-Christian message. The Apostle Paul warned in 1 Timothy 6:10 that the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, and Manson's commercial success demonstrated how financial incentives could turn entertainment into a weapon against Christian faith. His mainstream acceptance showed that America's cultural institutions were willing to profit from attacks on biblical Christianity. Marilyn Manson's legacy reveals how anti-Christian messaging can be successfully marketed to mainstream audiences when it's packaged as rebellion, art, and personal empowerment, rather than explicit spiritual warfare. His influence extended far beyond music, inspiring fashion trends, cultural attitudes, and an entire generation's approach to spirituality and morality. By making hatred of Christianity seem cool, intelligent, and profitable, Manson opened the door for countless other artists to attack biblical faith while building successful careers. The Bible warns in 2 Timothy 3:13 that evil people and impostors will go from bad to worse, deceiving and being deceived. And Manson's mainstream success created a blueprint for making spiritual deception profitable and culturally acceptable. His story proves that when attacking Christianity becomes commercially viable, entire industries will participate in spreading anti-Christian messages to maximize profits. But if you think Manson's mainstream anti-Christian messaging was dangerous, the next artist we'll examine took ritual occultism to levels that made even hardened metal fans uncomfortable. Watain, the Swedish black metal band formed in 1998, crossed a line that even the most extreme metal bands had previously avoided. They brought genuine occult rituals and authentic satanic practices directly onto concert stages, eliminating any pretense of theatrical performance or artistic expression. Led by vocalist Eric Danielson, Watain performs what they openly describe as satanic rituals rather than concerts, complete with altar setups, ritual invocations, and the use of real animal blood, decomposing flesh, and occult ceremonial elements that create an atmosphere of genuine spiritual darkness. At first glance, some might assume this is simply extreme theatrical performance taken to its logical conclusion. But here's the chilling reality. Watain members are practicing Satanists who use their concerts as actual religious services, turning music venues into temples for demon worship and occult practice. The band openly states that their goal is not entertainment, but spiritual transformation of their audiences through exposure to authentic satanic rituals. The Bible warns in Leviticus 17:7, they must no longer offer any of their sacrifices to the goat idols to whom they prostitute themselves. Yet Watain's performances constitute exactly these forbidden practices, bringing ancient pagan rituals into modern concert halls. What makes Watain's spiritual practices particularly dangerous is their commitment to authentic occultism rather than theatrical shock value, creating genuine spiritual encounters with demonic forces that affect both performers and audiences in ways that transcend entertainment. Before each performance, band members engage in ritual preparations, including meditation, invocations, and ceremonial applications of animal blood and decomposing matter that they believe opens spiritual channels to demonic entities. Their stage setup includes authentic altars, ritual implements, and sacrificial elements that mirror traditional satanic worship practices, while their performances incorporate genuine invocations, curses, and spiritual declarations that practicing occultists recognize as legitimate ritual work. Audience members frequently report feeling physically ill, experiencing supernatural phenomena, and having disturbing spiritual experiences during and after Watain concerts that extend far beyond normal concert experiences. Jesus declared in Luke 10:19, "I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy." But Watain's rituals specifically invite the enemy's power into their venues, creating spiritual environments where demonic influence can operate freely. But what's even more disturbing is how Watain's authentic occult practices have influenced other metal bands to move beyond theatrical shock into genuine spiritual warfare, creating a network of musicians who use their platforms for actual demon worship and occult evangelism. The band's success and critical acclaim within the metal community has proven that authentic satanic practice can be commercially viable and artistically respected, encouraging other musicians to explore genuine occultism rather than mere shock tactics. Watain members openly discuss their occult beliefs in interviews, promote satanic literature and practices, and use their influence to recruit new adherents to satanic philosophy and practice. Their concerts serve as recruitment events for occultism, with band members encouraging audience participation in ritual elements and providing resources for those interested in pursuing satanic practice. The Apostle Peter warned in 2 Peter 2:1-2, "But there were also false prophets among the people, just as there will be false teachers among you. They will secretly introduce destructive heresies. Many will follow their depraved conduct and will bring the way of truth into disrepute." Watain's open promotion of satanic practice through music perfectly fulfills this prophetic warning, using artistic credibility to make occultism appear legitimate and desirable. Watain's influence reveals how music can become a vehicle for genuine occult evangelism, transforming concert venues into temples for demon worship and using artistic platforms to recruit adherents to satanic practice. Their commitment to authentic ritual practice rather than theatrical performance has established a new standard for spiritual darkness in music, proving that some artists are genuine servants of Satan rather than mere entertainers seeking shock value. The band's success demonstrates that authentic occult practice can find mainstream acceptance when it's packaged as artistic expression, allowing demon worship to operate openly in public venues under the protection of artistic freedom. The Bible warns in Ephesians 6:12 that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. And Watain's ritual performances represent exactly these spiritual forces operating through human agents. Their story proves that when musicians become genuine practitioners of occultism, their concerts become battlegrounds in the spiritual war between light and darkness. But if you found Watain's raw occult practices shocking, the next artist we'll examine managed to make blasphemy appear sophisticated and intellectually respectable. These 5 musical practices prove that when art becomes a vehicle for spiritual warfare, it can lead millions away from biblical truth through deception disguised as entertainment. The Bible warns in Matthew 7:15, "Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves." That's why knowing the Word of God is crucial, so you won't be deceived by artistic expressions that sound sophisticated but contradict Scripture and lead souls toward spiritual destruction. Make sure to click on the video appearing on your screen right now for more biblical truths that will strengthen your faith and protect you from deception. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these musical practices surprised you the most? Comment below. Along with the country you're watching from, let's see how many nations God is using to spread these warnings. Also, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends and family who need this truth. May God bless you and keep you safe from deception.